Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather. On satellite imagery from yesterday, had some clouds here building out in the Gulf of Alaska and also up into the southeast interior later on. Otherwise, same conditions, a lot of sunshine, Tanana Valley, actually the Yukon Flats, all the way down into the Bering Sea. Alaska Peninsula dry, very weak remnant of a front across the central Aleutians. A little bit of clouds here for the eastern Aleutians with the main activity out to the west and not very strong at all. We had a front approaching the Queen Charlotte Islands, swinging up yesterday into about that position. Otherwise, variably cloudy, a few scattered isolated rain and snow showers for the Panhandle, and a very weak front dropping down on the western Arctic coast. For today, that feature, you can just catch it right through there and then kind of dissipates as it trails back toward the Alaska Range. Not much in the way of anything going on with that up there with the northerly flow aloft. High pressure still out over the Bering Sea. Dry conditions and temperatures on the low side of average across all of the state, right down across Cook Inlet today. Fair amount of sunshine. And this front edging ever so slowly northward could be bringing some moisture into the southern part of the Panhandle cross Dixon entrance currently. Otherwise, not a lot up to the north. Clouds, scattered areas of precipitation, especially Yakutat over toward Cordova, and then northward here into the Wrangell Mountains and possibly north of Prince William Sound there. But nothing real widespread, organized, or heavy with that. Just some lighter type stuff, but another sunny day here, south central Alaska. Down across Kodiak Island, a few clouds though, but no precipitation. And this right through here, not the clouds, but that's the ice edge from Bristol Bay showing up and then cutting back through here. We've got clear skies all the way out to the Pribilofs and beyond. Almost down there to the eastern Aleutians, but you're more under the influence of that frontal boundary down to the south that moved northward here last night and during the day today a little bit, getting up close enough to start to pick the winds up and bring the clouds in, and looks like it's pretty cloudy all the way out to the Komodorsky Islands. On the analysis today, here's some moisture streaming up there toward the eastern Aleutians in the form of mostly rain, depending on your elevation, and winds on the increase, but lighter winds, not too bad, all the way along that weak frontal boundary on out to the west. And again, basically clear skies right from here, the edge of the lower stuff, the stratus, and all this is really ice through here. Could be some clouds in there as well, but pretty good conditions right up through the interior Arctic coast, looking really nice. North slope, light winds, basically dry. And then we've got the snow shower activity here from the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound, scattering out as you head north there, really light from the Alaska Range north to, say, around Northway. And then that extends over to the east a little bit, watching this next system come northward here, struggling, probably getting some moisture in there currently, and that'll continue into tonight as kind of the front just washes out into a trough. Southeast flow ahead of this 997 millibar low, that'll pull the moisture northward. So you're looking at, of course, what farther north you are, that'll be in the form of snow, and it'll be kind of a mixed condition with the southeast winds, warming conditions, trending towards snow down at sea level. And look for increasing clouds and developing areas of light snow or snow showers over the northern southeast coastal areas, Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, Juneau, and continuing here for Yakutat, snow showers continue along the North Gulf Coast on the north side of that weak low in the Gulf of Alaska, and that includes Prince William Sound, possibly Valdez, but no big amounts expected with any of this, and even lesser over the Copper River Basin now, holding on to some flurries north side of the Alaska Range in those usual areas. Otherwise, no change for the interior. Variably cloudy with light winds, very light winds up along the Arctic coast, virtually no wind at all up there in the North Slope. and real light conditions down into the northern Bering Sea. And Bristol Bay dry. Pribilofs staying maybe mostly clear throughout the night tonight. Some passing clouds. Definitely dry. Wind's not too bad. Windiest area will be here along the eastern Aleutians and maybe up to the False Pass area, maybe King Cove, and then just less wind and some scattered showers out along the Aleutians. But high pressure up here over the Russian Far East, ridging across the north slope there to the Mackenzie River Delta. Looks like it will shift a little bit, but not too much. So tomorrow, more of a northeast flow here across into the northern Bering Sea on down to the Pribilofs. Not too strong, 15 to 25 miles an hour. Maybe a little gustier. The 30 mile to 35 mile an hour winds throughout the North Gulf Coast, Valdez today. Those will begin to drop off tonight and also tomorrow as that low center lifts northward right up toward somewhere around western Prince William Sound, maybe back to Resurrection Bay, but moisture will be streaming northwestward with this, so pretty good chance of snow along the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound pulling back into Whittier, maybe as far west as Portage. Pretty iffy getting across the Chugach Mountains there, just some clouds and then staying clear back toward the Alaska Range on out to the southwest coast. Just some variable stuff possible here. Could be just virtually clear all along the coast again tomorrow, even up to St. Lawrence Island. Light winds continue there. Light winds also along the Arctic coast, although starting to become a little more easterly now for tomorrow afternoon. And then this moisture, again, pulling westward throughout the day and into the afternoon by about 4 p.m., something like this, with it continuing to progress to the west tomorrow night. Otherwise, front swinging into the Panhandle, so kind of windy conditions. Periods of rain depending on your elevation and time of day, but definitely probably going to be all rain at sea level here, central and southern areas right up the coastline, mixed to snow, say from Haines on up to Skagway. And Kodiak could pick up a few light snow showers, mostly along the coast there, but again, nothing significant, just some clouds. This system now mostly south of the Aleutian chain with the rainfall, but close enough there that just a shade difference in the forecast here could put you in a little bit of moisture, or to the north, clear skies. And basically a day much like today here over the Bering Sea, northeast winds, variable amounts of cloudiness, and then a not so strong system continues to plague the far western Aleutians. Taking a look at the outlook day for Tuesday, shaping up like this. That system out there really weakens into a trough, but hangs close enough to keep it wet over the Sumianatu area. Otherwise, pretty nice conditions across the Aleutians. Light winds, scattered showers south of Adak and Atka, and could be some pretty good sunshine there from Atka right up to the Alaska Peninsula. Even the Pribilofs again looking pretty good. Still cold air, cool conditions with that north to northwest wind flow. And actually an upper level trough now pulling back into the western interior. So we're going to see south to north flow aloft developing here. That's going to spread more moisture. Clouds will increase. Areas of snow will also increase with this low tracking to the north into the Gulf of Alaska during the afternoon. So rain or rain and snow onto the North Gulf Coast, trending over to rain with the warmer air. But snow pushing westward, possibly into the Chugach Mountains, maybe into Anchorage, but actually the flow southeast to northwest. So downslope areas here west of the Chugach probably won't see anything but clouds. And then as it gets on the upslope areas of the Alaska Range, it'll re-enhance something like this, especially along the trough axis out here from the central interior right on down along the Alaska Range. Then breaking out just some clouds for Kodiak with light winds, maybe some sun. Really nice conditions, but continued cold out along the west coast into the Bering Sea. And now we'll see an increase in the winds here on the eastern Arctic coast. Brisk wind advisories, especially on that far eastern zone there around Kaktovik. Looks like 25, maybe 30 knots out of the east, and then considerably lighter by the time you get to the central coast. Maybe some flurries up there with that north end of the trough there over the north slope, nothing significant. And then snow right over into the Yukon there, mostly through this area, but dry over the eastern or the central eastern Tanana Valley 40-mile country. Warm air sliding northward. Could be a pretty mild day here over the southern southeast coast, especially if the clouds break and let the sun out. Periods of rain up to the north with that warm front, and a little bit of a pickup in the winds with that system, but it's not all that strong and mainly affecting the offshore zone. Temperatures today along the Arctic coast, below zero mostly, but Kaktovik did rise to 1 degree above zero. as did Point Lay. Otherwise, Kivalina -6, -5 at Kotzebue, same thing at Buckland. Selawik 1 degree below zero, but Ambler up to 6 above. 0 down at Tuvik, near 20 here from Bettles on over toward Fort Yukon. And about that pattern really all the way down to the Tanana Valley, the Alaska Range, mostly lower 20s here into the McGrath-Nikolai area on up to Galena, and then back down into the teens across the deltas, and then back to the 20s by the time you get out to the coast. Coming southward here, that's Talkeetna with 36, 24 at Glen Allen, 14 at Savunga, and then even south of that here, southern Alaska, a lot of above freezing temperatures showing up, 39 Seward, 36 in Talkeetna with 37 degrees there at Cordova, 24 at Gulkana, mid-30s there at Kodiak Island, 20s northeast Bristol Bay, lower mid-30s to upper 30s for the peninsula, and right around freezing for the Pribilof. Southeast coast, so that's Wrangell with 54 degrees this afternoon, otherwise Annette had 46, State Capital 43. And for out west, again, as I mentioned, lower to mid-30s there for the Pribilofs. Warm spot, Atka, 54 degrees, 41 at Adak, 37 on Alaska. Lows tonight, again below zero, Tanana Valley, all the way out to the Arctic coast, and near or above here across much of the southwest interior. 5 to 15, maybe down near zero again, some areas south central Alaska, mid-20s North Gulf Coast. Pretty mild over the central and southern Panhandle as well as the Aleutians. And for the highs tomorrow, staying below zero there, North Slope and Arctic coast, but not that far below, into the mid-20s for the Tanana Valley. Lower to mid-30s again, maybe even upper 30s here for the Susitna Valley. Cooler for the Prince William Sound area, 40s for the Panhandle, 30s to lower 40s out in the Aleutians. And taking a look at flying weather for tomorrow, a band of IFR trying to come up, not quite getting into Prince William Sound. Looks like this marginal stuff along the coast. Marginal VFR mostly over the central and southern Panhandle, IFR, eastern Arctic coast. Pretty good out here over the Aleutians, and then that front out to the west, that's where most of the IFR will be. So for tomorrow afternoon, that actually looks like it retreats a little bit to the west there. That's just due to the front weakening, and a swath of marginal possible there. Pribilofs down to the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, and then a little bit of IFR also possible through the Bering Strait. Arctic coast looking good, interior looking good, and a little more IFR showing up here for the North Gulf Coast, and then that's mostly off the Panhandle coastline. And for passes Anatuvik, VFR adding in as well, staying open, Lake Clark and Merrill, another good VFR day for the really the entire Alaska Range. Rainy, windy, Mentasta and Isabel. VFR through tomorrow. And Tanita, same forecast. Portage, though, marginal VFR, especially on the eastern entrance. That's where the lowest conditions will be. Chilkoot and White look IFR. For the freezing levels, warmer air, again, those storm lows tracking northward. So that's pulling 2,000 feet right up the coastline there, almost to Juneau or Elfin Cove here by about 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. At the surface along the coast, still east of Kodiak Island, and then cutting across Falls Pass off to the northwest. Icing, this will be the area that would get it, if anyone does, from Dixon Entrance, all the Panhandle back to the west along the North Gulf Coast. Prince William Sound, turning an arm, give or take there, probably not too significant on this end of things. And for the winds aloft, cold upper low here still, southern Alaska, and basically a trough with the high pressure out over the Bering Sea. South flow into the Panhandle, not all that significant. And eventually during the week, the pattern is going to change. And actually by Tuesday, this upper low will develop over the western interior. It's going to put southerly flow in across the eastern interior to start with. And that'll last probably through the week and continue to come into full array. So for the 9,000 foot winds, 20 to 30 knots southeasterlies here. Eastern Gulf of Alaska, 20 to 25 on the north side of the low. Northeast winds, not too bad, except around the eastern Aleutians, 30 to 40 knots. 3,000 foot winds, 30 to 35 Alaska Peninsula across the eastern Aleutians, lighter up to the north. Easterlies here in the interior, 25 to 30 there in a narrow band, southeast 25, in across the eastern Alaska Range area, on down along and off the southeast coast. So turbulence-wise, we've got occasional moderate chop here for the Panhandle, especially the central southern areas down to Dixon Entrance. Light to isolated moderate, cutting off here, southern Alaska looking pretty good. Those winds over the interior could be a little moderate up in that area, but not too bad. Maybe a little bumpy all the way out to the southwest coast and Pribilofs, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. As you well know, you can get forecast information for any day of the week. Today, tonight, tomorrow, out to 6 or 7 days. It includes the high and low temperature, the wind direction, the chance of rain or snow in your part of Alaska. But did you know that there is information available to forecast out to 2 weeks? So the question is, how would you use that information? And here to answer that question today and tell us a lot more about climate services from the U.S. National Weather Service Alaska region is Rick Thoman. He's the program manager for the Climate Science and Services. And Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
How would we use information that is out to 2 weeks instead of just the high and low and the chance of rain?
Well, Dave, as we move out in time, of course, forecasts become more uncertain. So as we move into that second week from now, we're not looking at specific highs or lows or precipitation amounts at any given place. What we can do with the state of the science at this point is get a handle on patterns. So we can say things like increased chances for stormy weather in the Bering Sea in 2 weeks, or we've been in a cold weather pattern, looks like 8 to 10 days from now, that pattern's going to change. Those are the kind of forecasts that we can currently make in that second week.
So you're increasing lead time for perhaps big or small weather events and telling us the likelihood of maybe more coastal storms or wind events in some areas?
Those are the kinds of things that that we hope to be able to let Alaskans know in the second week forecast. And if you have an activity or an event that you would find that kind of advance notice useful, whether it's moving stuff off of the beach, whether to go out hunting or to come back from camp, those kind of decisions, the week 2 provides the opportunity for you to get a handle on that kind of information.
Okay. What other type of weather impacts that we're familiar with might Alaskans use climate services for?
Well, in the forecast realm, we can go provide some information from this week 2, say the 8 to 14 day period, on out to the monthly and even seasonal time scale. Now, those monthly seasonal forecasts are still kind of just really very much pattern dependent, and the amount of detail that we can provide at this point is still pretty limited. Generally, indications of how temperature and precipitation will fall in maybe above normal, below normal kind of range. But in the week 2 period, we can be considerably more specific than that as far as the general patterns and really the impacts on Alaskans.
Okay, so we would be talking about generalizations there that would tell us that the period might be more stormy, might be more hot, more dry, more cold, and situations like that.
That's correct. So we're not going to be able to say in which community, for instance, there's the threat of coastal flooding, but we can often be able to tell we're moving into a pattern that would be conducive to big Bering Sea storms. So if you're in an area that could potentially impact you, you'll want to pay attention to the weather forecast.
Okay. Now, every day and every hour of the day, the National Weather Service is working on a forecast for the next day. But how do you start your forecast process for that extended period that goes out beyond 7 days?
Well, the way things work right now, we start off with the expected general flow pattern for Alaska and the whole world, really, and then we narrow that down to Alaska. So we start off with the basic computer model forecast. There's quite a few different computer models that we look at, bring those together. And then another important part of that is we attempt to assess the confidence. The reality is often 2 weeks away, the computer models are very divergent. They have lots of different solutions, and that's an indication that we don't have much confidence. But when we see more agreement in that time frame, and when that agreement is a pattern that will be potentially very impactful for Alaska or is a big change from what we've been in, that's when we can then take that expected pattern. We have computer models forecasting it. We've assessed the confidence. Now we can move that forward. How, using our experience as Alaskan weather forecasters, how does that typically play out for Alaska? So is this a stormy pattern for the Bering Sea? Is this an extra rainy period for Southeast? Is this the kind of pattern that generates strong winds potentially in the Anchorage Bowl? Is this a deep cold pattern for the interior? All of those are the kind of things that we're looking at in these large-scale patterns. That's very different than telling you that the winds on 10 days from now are going to be gusting to 120 on the hillside. We're looking for patterns, not the very specific information that the Weather Service will then hone in on as the event gets closer.
So the idea is to keep the 5, 6, 7 day forecast the same, where you are getting the standard high and low temperature and the chance of wind or rain, but further out you get a broad general forecast, but as the time gets closer to that event, we'll get a lot more specific.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So how can people use this information if I am out in the bush and I want to see, is a coastal storm expected in my region, or is a chance for that improving over the next 2 to 3 weeks? Where could I go to get information like that?
When we see that potentially impactful or a big change in the weather is coming 8 to 14 days out, typically we will start to highlight that on the Weather Service Facebook site. We might produce a YouTube video highlighting that, linking that on our Facebook site. So often we don't, at this point, we don't have much to say in that because we're really looking for those forecasts of opportunities. But one thing we can say very likely as we go through the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of this kind of forecast information available in that week 2 time frame.
Okay, and something that emergency managers and city planners and folks in villages might be interested in keeping an eye out for, looking for that information to be headlined, whether that's on social media or perhaps through the National Weather Service channels there to get information from you to make better plans a little bit longer term and make better preparations in the event that things become a little bit more unsettled.
Absolutely. Climate Services with the National Weather Service Alaska region is talking to the state of Alaska every week, apprising them of that 2-week outlook. And on the social media side, we are working to keep Alaskans informed so that when we think we have some confidence in a high impact or a big change, that's the best way right now for folks to find out about that. Twitter, Facebook, so stay tuned to your National Weather Service.
Very good, a developing program. Rick Thoman with the National Weather Service Alaska region. He's a Climate Science and Services Program Manager. Thanks so much for joining us again, Rick, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Great, thanks, Dave.
For another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. We'll see you next time.
Satellite showed a clear shot today. Clear skies all out across eastern Bering, again to the Pribilofs. Vividly showed the ice edge out here and the strips coming off due to the northeast wind flow. And no change expected over the next couple of days, continuing to gradually edge its way in toward St. Paul and St. George. So not much change from the forecast that went out Friday. And still pretty good ice here, especially compared to the last several years throughout Bristol Bay. And for the southeast coast, small craft advisories tomorrow, southerlies 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 16 feet. Small craft advisories central and southern inside waters there at about 25. Lighter winds for Lynn Canal, southeast 20. For Tuesday, much lighter winds here from Lynn Canal, northern Lynn Canal, all the way down to Clarence Strait and Dixon Entrance. 20 knot southerlies here with those 11 to 13 foot seas, keeping small craft advisories up out along all of the coast. Prince William Sound, light northeasterlies tomorrow at about 15, even lighter for northern Cook Inlet. And then 20 knots, Kachemak Bay across the Barrens, and then swinging around to the southeast at 20 here for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Light winds Kodiak Island. And light winds continue for Tuesday as well throughout that area, and even lighter, but still northwest or maybe a little variable here for the Barren Islands back to Kachemak Bay. Cook Inlet, 10 knot winds or less. Hanging on to the southeast 20s here for the eastern North Gulf Coast. Otherwise looking pretty light elsewhere. For the Bristol Bay zone tomorrow, northeast 20 picks up to small craft advisory levels here on the north side of the Bering Sea. Still possible gale force winds minimum up to 35 knots. That's about it. And then falling back there from Castle Cape to Sitkinak down to 20. And then for Tuesday, more northerly here, Bristol Bay along the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, just 15 knots. Northeast 20, Castle Cape to Cape Sarachev. Northwest 15 on up towards Sitkinak. For the eastern Aleutians, 25 to 35 knot winds, especially for Unalaska Island, staying pretty breezy there, 10 to 18 foot seas. Less wind, northeast 20 for the central Aleutians, picking back up to 25 as you get out toward Kiska Island on west. And then for Tuesday, those fall back to 20 knots, pretty uniform here. Easterlies at 20, all the way back, then they turn, actually this zone here, it looks like I didn't use enough glue. That's an east wind for that area as well. Northeasterlies here for much of the Fox Islands, but all at about 20 knots. For the southwest coast, northeast 20 knots here coming out of Kuskokwim Bay. North of Nunivak Island, a little lighter, small craft advisory, St. Matthew Island on down to the Pribilof, seas up to 9 feet, northeast 10 for St. Lawrence Island. And then for Tuesday, northerlies at about 15, so really staying in that light wind pattern here for the northern Bering Sea. Pribilofs, northeast 20, and that's about it. And then some 20 knot winds here south of Nunivak Island, west of Kuskokwim Bay. Up along the Arctic coast tomorrow, light winds continue. Variable to east, maybe 5 knots, or that's really a no wind forecast. Northeast 15, barely a breeze on the west side, all the way down to the Bering Strait. And then things actually change on Tuesday. Those winds pick up 15 knots on the central coast, edging up to brisk wind advisories there for that eastern zone. And then 20 knots here from Cape Beaufort, all the way down to Wales out in the north, 20 knots. For tonight again, moisture spreading northwestward here, snow and then becoming rain, southern southeast coast, snow showers continue north Gulf Coast, up across Prince William Sound and a ways to the west and to the north, back down toward Kodiak. And tomorrow, more rain, kind of windy for the southeast coast, snow increasing here along the north Gulf Coast. And then for Tuesday, we've got a big cold upper trough back here to the west, the axis aloft right through here. South to north flow, warmer conditions, more moisture, clouds, rain, and snow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.